I knew my husband was cheating before he admitted it. I just didn't know he was planning to leave me with nothing. The first clue was a receipt. It was for a hotel room 2 hours from our house, dated on a Tuesday when Daniel had told me he was working late. The second clue was the perfume on his jacket. The third was the way he started locking his phone, even when he took a shower. But none of those things broke me. What broke me was the email I found 3 weeks later. It was from a lawyer. The subject line said, "Final asset transfer." And beside my name was one word, remove. My name is Alina Carter. I'm 36 years old, and for 11 years I believed I was building a life with the man I loved. We had a beautiful house, 2 cars, a small investment account, and a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. At least, that's what I thought. Daniel and I met when I was 23. He was funny, confident, and the kind of man who made everyone around him feel important. When we married, he told me I was the safest place he had ever known. I believed him. For years, I was the one who kept everything together. I paid the bills, managed our mortgage, organized our insurance, and handled the paperwork for Daniel's consulting business. He called me his backbone. I thought that was love. Now I understand it was also convenience. The night I found the hotel receipt, Daniel came home at 11:47. He kissed my forehead and said, "Long day." I smiled. "Looks like it." He walked past me without noticing that I was holding the receipt in my hand. I almost confronted him. Almost, but something inside me whispered, "Wait." So I waited. The next morning, I checked our joint account. There was a $1,850 transfer I didn't recognize. The description said consulting expense. I opened the business account. Nothing. Then I checked our shared credit card. There were 3 restaurant charges from a neighborhood I had never seen Daniel visit for work. And one of them was for 2 people. That was when the accountant in me woke up. I stopped asking whether Daniel was cheating. I started asking a different question. How long had he been hiding it? For the next 9 days, I said nothing. I watched. I recorded dates. I saved statements. I copied every transaction I didn't recognize. Daniel thought I was still the trusting wife who believed every excuse. That was his first mistake. His second mistake was leaving his laptop open on a Sunday morning. I was looking for a tax document when a notification appeared. Claire, he still hasn't told her. I froze. Claire. I knew that name. Claire Bennett was Daniel's business partner. She had been to our house twice. She had hugged me at Christmas. She had stood in my kitchen and called me the lucky woman. I clicked the message. There were only 4 words from Daniel. She won't know yet. I stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. And then I saw the next message. I spent that entire Monday pretending nothing had changed. Daniel sat across from me at breakfast, scrolling through his phone while I made coffee. "Big day?" he asked. "Very." He smiled. "You look tired." But I looked directly into his eyes and said, "I'm fine." That was the first lie I had ever told my husband. And it was the first lie I told to protect myself. At lunch, I called my best friend Maya. She had known me since college, and she had never trusted Daniel. I told her about the hotel receipt, the messages, and the strange transfers from our accounts. She asked, "Do you have copies of your financial records?" "Yes." "Are they somewhere Daniel can access?" "Our home computer." "Then move them." That afternoon, I created a private email account and changed my banking passwords. I downloaded our mortgage statements, tax returns, and business records. Then I checked the deed to our house. My name was on it. But 6 months earlier, Daniel had filed something with the county. It was connected to a property transfer. I searched the public records. My stomach dropped. He had been preparing to move our house into a company called Carter Holdings LLC. Carter, my last name. I had never created that company. She told me to find a lawyer, so I did. Her name was Rebecca Stone. She studied the papers before looking at me. "Alina, this is more serious than an ordinary property dispute." "Why?" She pointed to the transfer document. Someone is preparing paperwork to make it look like you agreed to this. My throat tightened. I never signed anything. Rebecca looked at the signature. I know. How? She turned the page toward me. Because the signature isn't yours. I stared at it. It looked almost perfect. Someone had practiced my name. Someone had forged my signature. Rebecca asked if Daniel could access any old identification documents. I thought about our filing cabinet and my old driver's license. Then I remembered something. 2 months earlier, Daniel had asked for a copy of my passport. He said the business bank needed it. I had handed it over without thinking. I gave him my passport, I whispered. Rebecca became very still. Then she said something that changed everything. Alina, I don't think the affair is the real story. What do you mean? I think the affair is a distraction. My heart started pounding. From what? She tapped the forged document. From whatever your husband is trying to take from you. That night, Daniel came home carrying flowers. I'm sorry I've been distant lately. Then he touched my hand. You know I love you, right? I smiled. But inside, something had changed. I no longer cared about catching my husband with another woman. I wanted to know what he was really planning. And I wanted to know what he thought I was worth, because Daniel still believed I knew nothing. And I was going to let him believe that. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Daniel. Not yet. I was going to let him believe everything was still under his control. Rebecca told me I needed evidence before emotion. So I went home and became the woman Daniel expected. He relaxed. That was when I realized how little he knew me. He thought kindness meant weakness. He thought silence meant ignorance. He had no idea I was keeping a second set of books. Over the next 2 weeks, I tracked everything. Daniel stayed out later. Claire called him constantly. Money moved between accounts. I discovered Carter Holdings wasn't really a new business. It had been created months earlier, and the owner was Claire. I stared at the record. The woman my husband was supposedly having an affair with was also connected to the company receiving our money. The affair wasn't separate from the financial plan. It was part of it. Then I received a letter from our mortgage company. It said my account information had been updated. I hadn't changed anything. I called immediately. The representative told me there had been a request to change the mailing address. To where? I asked. She gave me an address. It was Claire's apartment. My hands went cold. They weren't just hiding money. They were redirecting our financial life. When I arrived at Rebecca's office, she had another document waiting. It was a draft separation agreement. My name was typed at the top. Daniel would keep the house. He would keep the business. He would keep our investments. I would keep my personal belongings and several debts. I would walk away with almost nothing. I looked at the last page. There was my signature again, forged. But this time, another signature was beside it. Claire Bennett. I laughed. Rebecca watched me. Are you okay? No. I looked at the document, but I'm finally awake. That evening, I went home early. Daniel was in the shower. His phone was on the kitchen counter. A message appeared. Claire, tomorrow night, we finish this. Then another message arrived. Once she signs, everything belongs to us. When Daniel came downstairs, I was sitting at the table. He looked at me. You okay? I nodded. Just tired. He kissed my cheek. Then he asked the question that almost made me laugh. Do you trust me? I looked directly into his eyes. Yes. He smiled. Good. No, Daniel. I trust the evidence. The next day, Rebecca found one more document. It wasn't the final transfer. It was an authorization that could allow Daniel to move several remaining assets without my approval. If he filed it, I could spend years proving I had never agreed. Rebecca looked at me. We need to make him think you're still cooperating. For the first time since I found that hotel receipt, I wasn't afraid. I was waiting. And Daniel had no idea what was coming. And for the first time, I knew the person sitting across from me at breakfast was not the man I thought I married. Daniel came home Friday night carrying a folder. He placed it on the kitchen table. I think we need to talk. I looked at the folder. About what? About us? His voice was soft, almost caring. Then he sat across from me. I've been unhappy for a long time. I lowered my eyes. I know. He looked surprised. You do? I nodded. I've felt the distance. He opened the folder. These are separation papers. Daniel pushed a pen toward me. I don't want this to get ugly. I stared at the pen. What happens if I don't sign? You make this difficult. There it was. The real Daniel. Not the charming husband. Not the man who brought flowers. The man underneath. I picked up the pen. His eyes brightened. I slowly turned the papers toward myself. Then I said, before I sign anything, I want to understand the assets. He hesitated. What assets? Our assets? He smiled nervously. There isn't much. I almost laughed. Then you won't mind showing me. He stood. I'm not doing this tonight. Why not? Because you're emotional. That word, emotionally. The oldest weapon people use when they don't want to answer a woman's questions. I looked at him. Fine. I put the pen down. He grabbed the folder. And for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not guilt. Fear. Because he realized I wasn't signing. The next morning, Rebecca called. The county rejected the property transfer. I sat up. Why? Because your signature didn't match. I closed my eyes. What about the other documents? They're being reviewed. Then she said something else. There is a bigger problem for Daniel. What? The company he created using your last name has unpaid taxes. I was silent. Whose problem are they? Right now, whoever is legally connected to the company. I understood immediately. Daniel had created a company to move assets. He had used my identity, and now his own paperwork was starting to expose him. But I still needed proof that the entire plan was deliberate. That evening, I told Daniel I had changed my mind. I'll sign. He looked relieved. But I want one thing first. What? I want us to meet with both lawyers. His face changed. No. Why? Because there's no reason. I smiled. Then there should be nothing to worry about. That night, he left the house. Then I called Rebecca. It's happening. She understood. We had already prepared the next step. The following Monday, Daniel walked into his lawyer's office, believing he was about to finish the deal. Instead, Rebecca was waiting for him, and beside her was an investigator. Rebecca placed the evidence on the table. Bank transfers, forged signatures, property records, and messages between Daniel and Claire. He looked terrified. Then he said something I never expected. Alina, you don't understand what Claire and I were planning. I stared at him. What were you planning? He didn't answer. The investigator closed the door, and suddenly, I realized the house wasn't the only thing they had been trying to take. I thought the investigator would ask about the house first. Instead, she opened a second file. There is another financial issue. She placed a document on the table. It was a life insurance policy. I was the beneficiary. How long has this been active? 10 years. I looked at Daniel. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Your husband has made recent inquiries about this policy, she said. What kind? Beneficiary changes, loan options, cash value. My stomach tightened. He was trying to borrow against it. Yes. I looked at Daniel. You never told me I was going to. When he said nothing. The investigator closed the file. We found something unusual in the property records. She pushed a folder toward me. Inside was the transfer document Rebecca had shown me. But this copy had a witness name attached. I recognized it immediately. That's Daniel's business partner, correct? So they were working together. We don't know yet. Daniel leaned forward. This is being misunderstood. I turned toward him. Then explain it. He said nothing. The investigator looked at him. Mr. Carter, we need to speak with you separately. His face changed. For the first time, Daniel looked afraid. I was asked to wait outside. I thought about the flowers, the breakfast, and the kiss. Suddenly, every memory felt different, calculated. An hour later, the investigator returned. Alina, there is something you need to understand. What? We found evidence that Daniel was preparing for a financial separation before you discovered the affair. My heart sank. How far back? Almost a year. A year. I closed my eyes. The affair hadn't caused the secret accounts, the forged signature, or the property transfer. Those things were already happening. The affair had simply been the first crack I noticed. Then she handed me a bank statement. A large payment had been made from our joint account to Carter Holdings LLC 6 months earlier. I stared at the amount. Where did this money go? We're still tracing it. Through the glass, Daniel sat alone. No smile. No confidence. Just a man watching his plan collapse. The investigator leaned closer. There is one more thing. Daniel wasn't only trying to move the house. She paused. He was preparing to make you responsible for the debt. My breath caught. She placed another file in front of me. Inside were emails written from an account using my name. They appeared to authorize loans I had never requested, making it look like I was moving our money willingly. Someone had been building a story about me. A story that could destroy me financially. And Daniel had been building it long before I knew he was cheating. I stared at the first email. The signature was mine, but I had never written it. That was the moment I stopped wondering whether my marriage could be saved. I started wondering how much of my life had already been stolen. Daniel hadn't simply fallen in love with another woman. He had used her. Rebecca pushed another document toward me. This company received payments from your husband's business, she said. Large payments, every month. I stared at the numbers. How much? Enough to explain why your accounts started shrinking. My hands began to shake. Daniel had been moving money out of our business and into a company connected to the woman he was seeing. These payments were disguised as consulting fees, Rebecca said. Was she actually doing any work? Rebecca shook her head. There is no evidence of that. For the first time, I felt something stronger than anger. I felt relief, because I finally understood the truth. Daniel had planned this for years. The affair wasn't the beginning. It was part of the plan. He had created companies, moved money, forged my signature, and prepared to transfer our house. If I had never discovered the affair, he might have taken everything. I asked Rebecca what we could do. She smiled slightly. Now we stop him. That evening, I went home before Daniel. Everything looked different. I opened the filing cabinet. My passport copy was missing. So was my old driver's license. I photographed everything that remained. Then I heard the front door open. Daniel walked inside. You're home early. So are you. He put his keys down. Everything okay? I looked at him and smiled. Everything is perfect. He believed me. That was his mistake. The next morning, Rebecca filed an emergency request to stop the property transfer. She also contacted the bank about the suspicious transactions. Daniel didn't know any of it. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was the bank investigator. We found several transactions that require your attention. Are they connected to Daniel? There was a pause. Yes. My heart sank. How much? The investigator gave me the number. I couldn't speak. It was far more than I had imagined. Daniel had stolen from our business and borrowed money against assets we both owned. If his plan had worked, I could have been left with the debt. The accounts have been flagged, the investigator said. No further transfers can be made without review. I thanked him and hung up. That night, Daniel finally noticed something was wrong. He came into the kitchen holding his phone. Why did the bank call me? I kept my face calm. They called me too. His expression changed. What did they say? They had questions. About what? I looked directly into his eyes. I think you know. For the first time, Daniel didn't have an answer. Then he whispered, Alina. It was the voice of a man who knew his lies were collapsing. And this time, I wasn't going to save him. I wasn't going to forgive him. I wasn't going to ask why. I simply said, You should call your lawyer. His face went pale, and I knew the truth was finally catching up with him.